Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Point You're Not Sharp. Today we're taking a look at a Third Reich Zeitengewehr 103N for Norway. Now this actually started life off as a completely different bayonet. So initially this was a Norwegian model of 1916 bayonet, which was a really long sabre bayonet, and as you can see it has been shortened considerably. Now, those early bayonets were made for the Norwegian Krag Jorgensen rifles, being the model 1894 and the model 1912 carbine. And in total, 41,360 of the model 1916 bayonets were made by Kongsberg Weapons Factory between 1916 and 1926. Now, 31,000 of those bayonets were made to fit the model 1894 long rifle, while 12,160 were made for the model of 1912 carbine. Jumping into the history, prior to this bayonet here, or the model 1916, the Norwegians were using the model of 1894 bayonet, which is pretty much what we have here, but without a fuller, so a short knife bayonet, and it was a copy of a Danish knife. Now, when they moved to a shorter rifle, being the Model 1912 carbine, they found that the overall length of carbine and bayonet was significantly shorter than that of the rifle and the bayonet. And it was deemed, as with many other countries, that that would be a disadvantage on the field of combat, being that a longer rifle and bayonet combo would be more effective than a shorter one. So to negate that, they designed the Model 1916 bayonet with a significantly longer blade. This early iteration was the Model 1913, so not the actual 1916 that we have here. And the only real difference is that instead of being fullered on both sides of the blade, it was only fullered on one. And not a terrible lot of those were made. And a couple of years later, they sorted themselves out and started the 1916, which was the mass production bayonet, the one they made the most of. Jumping forward to World War II, in 1940, Germany marched into Norway and controlled Norway. And they took control of all the Norwegian arms and manufacturing plants. So all of the arms that were in service were converted to German use and redesignated. If you're not familiar with how the Germans did that, when they'd roll into a country, all the rifles would get designation as a Gewehr or Karabiner, and all of the bayonets would be redesignated as a Zeitengewehr. They would then have a number code and a country code. So the number code, here we have Zeitengewehr 103 is the number code, and then N in brackets for Norway. It's similar with many other countries, and the number code changes depending on type of weapon. So while these were made to fit the Krag Jorgensen model of 1894s, they were designated as the Gewehr 211N. Anything 2 is a long rifle, and the model 1912 carbines were redesignated the Karabiner 415N. And carabiners, as you can tell, were redesignated with numbers starting with 4. Now, they shortened all of the long bayonets because that's just what they did. They did it with French bayonets as well. In particular, they're the most common, but any long bayonet was pretty much shortened. They also started manufacturing bayonets, so they took control of the plant that was making the Model 1894 bayonets, and they started producing them. Now, those ones, they were designated the Zeitengewehr 102N, and they're a lot cruder than the Model 1894s in that the workers who were making them were obviously less motivated. They didn't appreciate Germany controlling them and their factory. But you can spot them because they have a different acceptance mark, being a really crude K under a crown. And they'll also have a Waffenamt inspection mark on the crossguard. All that said, we'll jump into the construction of the bayonet before us today. So the blade has been shortened into a spear point. We've got fullers down either side, and we have a flat spine. The blade has been sharpened at one point, but it's lost its edge, and it's got a bit of a greasy finish to it. And as you can see, there's been a fair bit of grinding done on this blade. if I can get the tool marks to show. So grinding down in this direction and also out in that direction. Bring it into a nice little knife point. And moving down, we've got a bit of an odd handle. So as you can see, we've got like a spine running down the handle with a channel running down the center to accommodate the barrel of the rifle. The bayonet slot itself, the mortise, is quite long, and the bayonet lug itself on the rifle is also very, very long. Then we have two wooden grips retained by a single screw, and we have a push button. And the push button serves two purposes. It locks the bayonet into the scabbard. So that's the locking mechanism in there, just like the American bayonets. And the other purpose is obviously it drops the locking bar in the mortise in there. And just moving down, we have a nice little hole here. Now, I'm not 100% certain if that's for a lanyard loop for like an officer NCO version of this bayonet, or if that's just like a lanyard loop for anyone, just chuck a shoelace through there or something like that. I'm really not certain. I know a lot of the German and Austrian bayonets for NCOs, they have a metal ring. So I don't know if that's the case here, but I love the shape of the pommel, the handle. It's just very, very different to pretty much any other bayonet you come across. So I'll give it points there. The scabbard has also been shortened. I've got a little ball finale down the end, and this one's missing the frog stud. I've seen photos of these in German service with a frog bar, kind of like the French had, and they've been stuffed into like a German Mauser style of frog. The initial Norwegian frogs are quite distinctive because they actually come out to one side, similar to what you'd expect on a cavalry style of frog. So, very, very cool. Finally, we might jump into the markings. Bit of a thunderstorm in the background there. So, on the right crossguard, we have our serial number, and this one is in the 24,000s. Now, I'm uncertain if the serial numbers match to a rifle or if they were done individually for the bayonet. I'm assuming they match a rifle. And I know the Craig Jorgensen rifles, you can actually look up the bayonets and figure out the year of manufacture. Sorry, not the bayonets, the rifles. You can look them up and figure out the year of manufacture based upon the serial number. So if they are matching, you can do the same for the bayonet. But then again, who knows if the bayonet was issued with the rifle, because I looked this one up and it came up to a model of 1894 rifle made in like 1897 or something like that, which is nearly 20 years before these were even brought into service, so that can't be correct. But who knows if it's not for a model 1912 carbine or not that. Then what have we got next? So on the right ricasso, if I can get this to focus, I'll put a photo up. The top there, we have an acceptance mark for King Haakon VII. And he was the monarch between 1905 and 1957. So I'm assuming because it has that acceptance mark, this is a bayonet between that time period, which it would have to be based on when these were actually made. And underneath that, we have a crown with an S underneath it. And that's some kind of an inspection mark. It's unspecified exactly what it means and who that inspector was. But, yeah. And we'll jump across on to the left ricasso. We have the Kongsberg, which is the manufacturer's control mark. And that's kind of like an old style of cursive K under a crown. Now, as I said, during World War II, the Germans took control of plants and started making crude copies. You can spot them very, very easily because they will have a very crude K under a crown. They'll also have a Waffen-Up on the crossguard. And the only other marking I've found on the bayonet itself is underneath, I call it the underspine, I don't know what the correct terminology is, but down here we have a T in a box and a B. And according to Peter Rubin's marking book, those are just check marks. So I don't know exactly what a check mark is. I assume it's like an inspection mark or maybe part of the manufacturing process. But yeah. And the only other marking you'll come across is another inspection mark. Where is it? just here on the ball fennel, got a tiny little F within a circle. I'll get that to focus. I'll put a photo up. Anyway, guys, that's all I can track down for these. Very cool, very interesting bayonet. I like it a lot. There's not a whole lot of readily available information, at least that I could find particularly expediently. And most of my books didn't have anything on these at all. And hell, even the bayonet groups that I'm on online, none of them had any information on these either. So that was a little disappointing. I know there is some fantastic information out there on particularly the Craig Jorgensen rifles, and I assume the bayonets as well, because there's some fantastic videos online about the rifles. Like you look at Matthias and May with C&R Arsenal, they have done fantastic pieces on the rifles, and they've got great information on the bayonets as well. So there's definitely good sources out there. I just don't know where they are. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got for you. Sorry, it's getting a bit noisy in the background for the storm. If I've made any mistakes, as always, feel free to comment below and correct me, and thanks for watching.